Hi everyone, this is Vicki and we're here on July 9th, 2019 to work through Lesson 9, Advanced Compositing in Photoshop CC 2019. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and we'll get started. All right, in this lesson, we're going to learn how to apply and edit smart filters. We're going to use the liquify filter to distort an image. We're going to apply color effects to some selected areas of an image, apply filters to create various effects, use the history panel to return to a previous state, and upscale a low resolution image for high resolution printing. You'll either want to open up your Lesson 9 folder in your Peach Pit lessons files that you've downloaded from the internet, or you'll want to download the files that I posted in this week's module. What we're working on today is a movie poster. And you'll see there's a background image, there's a monster image, and then there are several smaller images that have filters and effects applied to them. This monster is composed of an image of a normal person with several ghoulish images applied over him. And these monstrous additions are courtesy of Russell Brown with illustration by John Cannell. We're going to go ahead and open up all of those monstrous additions by using Bridge. I can go up to Photoshop, Browse in Bridge, and if you haven't opened Bridge yet, it might take a minute or so for that to open. But I actually do have it open right behind me, so I'll go ahead and go here. And you'll want to browse to where you've stored the downloaded lessons. There's a folder called Monster Makeup. If you're downloading these files from our weekly module, you'll see that you'll have all of these individual files, but you don't have the folder, so you'll just have to navigate to the files. I'm going to shift click the first and last file in order to select all of them. And then in Tools, I want to go to Photoshop, and I want to load these files into Photoshop layers. All right, and it did not do what I asked. So let's try that again. We want a new Photoshop file, but we want all of these. Oh, I'm sorry, they are. There we go. Okay, great. Photoshop, by going through Bridge, Photoshop loaded all of these selected files as individual layers in a new Photoshop file, which is untitled as of yet. And the designer used a red color to indicate the different components of the monster's look. Now we're back in Photoshop, and I'll go ahead and save this as a working file. I want to make sure it is saved as a PSD file and save it wherever you like to save your working files. I'll save mine on my desktop. And then click OK in the Format Options dialog box. Now our image contains 8 layers, and they were imported in an alphabetical order. In the current position, they don't make a very convincing monster. So we're going to rearrange the layer order, and we're going to resize the contents as we build our monster. You want to zoom out or scroll so that you can see all of the layers on the artboard. And then in the layers, you want to drag the monster hair layer to the very top of the layer stack. And just drop it in. Oops. There we go. Might take you a little bit of scrolling if you can't see it all, but get it to the top. You can drag this upwards. You can see a little more of the layers, but as you can see, there's quite a few layers, so you may have to scroll. Now we're going to drag the Franken layer, which is our gentleman, down to the bottom of the layer stack, because we actually want everything to go to layer over him. And then we'll select the Move tool, and we're going to move the Franken layer, the image of the person, to the bottom of the page. So we'll just kind of move him down, down, down. And make sure you've got all of them in. I think, there we go. In the Layers panel, we're going to shift-click every layer except for the Franken layer, and then choose Edit Free Transform. So I will click the top one, shift-click the rest of the effects, and I want to go up to Edit. I want to go to Free Transform. Now we're going to drag down a corner of this selection that we have here, which includes all of these layers, to about 50% of their original size. You want to go ahead and watch your percentage up here. We're at 100% now, and we want to drag it down to about 50%. You don't have to be super precise, but we're just trying to get them a little more appropriately sized. So almost there. There we go. And with that Free Transform bounding box still active, we'll position all of these layers over the head of the Franken layer so that we've got them just about in the right place. And then go ahead and select the Commit button or hit Enter or Return to apply those transformations. Now we'll zoom in so that we can see the head pretty clearly. I'll position this in the middle. I'm going to hide all the layers except for the green skin texture, the first one. So I'll just keep working my way up and clicking on the visibility icon to close all those. Now I just have my Franken layer and this green skin texture. Now I'll select only the green skin texture and use the Move tool to center it over the face. I'll be able to see his eyes. There we go, that looks pretty good. And choose Edit Free Transform, again, to adjust the fit of the texture. Fit the texture of the face. You'll use the eyes and the mouth as a guide, and you can press the arrow keys to just nudge this into position. And if we need to, we can use these. So you just want to kind of finesse this in so it fits his face really well. Okay, it's still a little bit big, as you can see. We've got his eyes lined up. We want the lips. So actually, maybe if we do it that way. There we go. Now we're starting to get it just about right. Anyway, just play with that until you get it lined up with his mouth and his eyes. And then when you're happy with it, go ahead and press enter or return to apply that transformation. And let's save our work at this point. Now we're going to work with some smart filters. So unlike regular filters, which permanently change an image, smart filters are non-destructive. They can be adjusted, they can be turned on and off, and they can be deleted. But you can only apply a smart filter to a smart object. We're going to use the liquefy filter to tighten up the eye openings and change the shape of his face. Because we want to be able to adjust the filter settings later, we're going to use the liquefy filter as a smart filter. And what we'll have to do first, convert the green skin texture layer to a smart object. So making sure that it's selected in the layers panel, we'll go up to filter and we'll choose convert for smart filters. This creates a smart object, and we get a little notification that we are converting a layer into a smart object. You can see by this little icon down here that this is now a smart object, and we'll go up to filter and we'll choose liquefy. Now we can see the layer in the liquefy dialog box. In this dialog box, we want to find the disclosure triangle next to face aware liquefy and close that set of options. In this lesson, we've used this face-aware liquefy before, and in this lesson, we're going to try some of the more manual liquefy techniques. We'll select Show Backdrop, and then we'll choose Behind from the Mode menu. We'll set the opacity to 75. We'll select the zoom tool and zoom into the eye area. And then we want to choose the forward warp tool, which is the first tool. So if you hover over those, you'll get a little tooltip. The forward warp tool will push pixels forward as you drag. Now we have an option, a brush tool option over here, and we want to set our size a little larger to about 150. And since that's so sensitive, it might be just as easy to type it in. And the pressure we want to set to 75. Now, with this forward warp tool, we want to pull the right eyebrow down to close the eye opening. His right, not our right. And then pull up from under the eye. Basically, you want to hide his eyes. And then do the same over here. Pull down. You can, there's a lot of flexibility in this. A lot of, you can really work on it and create your own look here. There we go. And then we've closed that gap around the eyes. We want to go ahead and click OK. Now, because we applied this as a smart filter, we can remove it or change it later without losing any image quality by just double clicking the smart object in the layers panel. So now that we've got some skin texture in place, we're going to move the other layers into position, working up from the lowest layers in the layers panel. We'll make the green nose stitches layer visible, and we'll make sure that we select it in the layers panel. Then again, we'll go up to Edit, Free Transform, which is Command or Control T if you want to use your keyboard shortcut, and we will position it over the nose and resize it as necessary. So it's looking a little big right now. To keep dragging this down. Looks like that's above. There we go. That looks pretty. Oh, okay. A little bit small. I'm going to keep his mouth the right spot. Kind of looking for, make sure you have things kind of lined up, and then enter or return to commit that transformation. And then I'll go to the green neck stitches and make that visible, and then select the layer, go to Edit, Free Transform. I can move this. This is his neck. We want to make sure we line that up. You can refer to the end file if you have that open. I'm going to do this relatively quickly, just so I'm not keeping you here forever. But I hope that you'll have fun with this. It is kind of neat to apply these transformations. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'll move up my layer stack to the green ear staples. And I'm going to move it over his right ear. I definitely want to make this a little bit smaller. And just know that your man may look a lot different just based on the decisions you make as you apply these effects. Well, the next one, which is his forehead. Whoops. So that you can do that, you can rotate it. Looks like we want to keep this over his hair. There we go. So in order to hide all of his hair, I have to go a little bit higher, which like that. Yeah, it's too bad. You know what? I'm going to unlock this. And then I should be able to squish this in a little bit. I'm not liking how his head's sticking up here, but I also don't want to make this too big for the space, so I'm going to deal with it. I would like to unlock this. All right, forget it. Just do the best I can. Let me know if you have the same problem. The artist must have that locked. And then we'll move up to the next layer, the bolts. Make sure you select the layer. Drag these down so that they're on either side of the neck. Again, Command or Control T so that you can resize these down. Have them fitting snugly against the neck. And last, we have the hair, which will take care of that problem I had earlier. Great. Move this over the forehead. And resize it so it fits. A lot of this is very subjective. All right, so now we have all these layers are in position, and we can further refine the eye openings, and we can experiment with the bulges in our eyebrows. And we're going to go back to our liquefy filter to make these adjustments. So in the layers panel, go ahead and scroll down and double click liquefy, just listed under the smart filters in the green skin texture layer. And now all the layers are visible. So when we have this show backdrop, we can see them all. And sometimes you want the backdrop to show. Sometimes you want to see your edits in context. So it's up to you whether you have that checked, and it may change with each time. So I'm going to zoom into the eyes. And I want to choose the pucker tool. That's the fifth one down. And then I'll click on the outside corner of each eye. And what the pucker tool does is it moves pixels towards the center of the brush as we click or hold the mouse button or drag. As I hold the mouse down, it puckers. A little bit of that. Then I want to choose the bloat tool, and the bloat tool will move pixels away from the center of the brush. And I want to click on the outside edge of an eyebrow to expand it. Do the same, oops, for the other eyebrow. So you can experiment with those to customize his face. And just remember that you can change the brush size, you can change other settings, you can go up to edit, undo for individual steps. But if you want to start all over, it's easiest just to click cancel and return to the liquefy dialog box. I'm going to zoom back out and see what I think. And for me, for now, for this demonstration, I think he's looking okay. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And then I want to save my work. Now there are lots of ways to paint objects and layers in Photoshop. One of the simplest ways is to use the color blending mode, which you've already done, and the brush tool. So we're going to use this method to paint the exposed skin on our monster green. I'll go ahead and select the Franken layer in the Layers panel, and I'll create a new layer by clicking this button down at the bottom. And Photoshop will create a new blank layer over the layer I had selected. And then I want to change the blending mode of this layer to color. And it's all the way down at the bottom. The color blending mode will combine the luminance of the base color, which is the color already on the layer, with the hue and saturation of the color that you're applying. And it's a great blending mode to use whenever you're tinting images. In the Tools panel over here, I'm going to select the Brush tool. And I want about a 60 pixel brush with a hardness of 0. So it's very soft and fuzzy. And I'll click outside somewhere to close that panel. Sorry about the saw noise in the background. It's my neighbor. Now I'm going to press Alt or Option to temporarily switch to the eyedropper tool. And I'll sample a green color from the forehead. Then I'll release the Alt or Option key and return to the Brush tool. Now I want to Control or Command click the thumbnail in the Franken layer to select its contents. You'll see there's the marching ants going around that. And so what I've done with Command or Control click is just Photoshop will just select the contents of the layer instead of the entire layer. I'll make sure that layer 1 is still selected in the Layers panel, and then I'll just use my brush tool to paint over the hands and the arms. And we can paint pretty quickly, especially where the hands are against transparent areas. Let me move over here so you can. But remember that the shirt is part of the selection, so we want to be more careful when we get near that because it's included in the selection. You can change your brush size if you need to. You want to get all the skin green. So over here I can kind of paint really quickly and see how Photoshop blends the area that you're painting. It retains all the nuances of the skin, but is essentially tinting it green. Again, when you get near the shirt, just be a little careful because the shirt is inside the selection. We'll paint any areas of the face or neck where you have any skin tone showing through. You can just kind of paint over. And then when you're happy with this, you can go ahead and choose Select, Deselect, or go down to your keyboard shortcut and go Command or Control D to deselect everything. And at this point, of course, you want to save your work. I'm going to go back to Fit on Screen so I can see my monster. He looks pretty good. And so now it's time to put this monster into our environment. And in order to easily move this monster, we're going to merge the layers. So we want to make sure that all the layers are visible. And then from the Layers panel menu over here, we'll go ahead and merge visible. Now we have a new layer with all the layers merged into one called Layer 1. We'll go ahead and rename that Monster so that we have it. We keep our, not Moonster, Vicky, Monster. There we go. All right, if you don't already have the backdrop.psd file open, you're going to go up to File, Open, and navigate to that, and open up the backdrop file. You can arrange your files by going up to Window, Arrange. You can tile them. If you only have those two files open, you can tile two up vertical, or not tile, choose two up vertical so that you can see the Monster and the backdrop files side by side. But since I have more files open, I'm not going to do that. It would just clutter up my screen. So I'll choose the Working 9 PSD file, make sure it's the active file, select the Move tool, and then I'll just click and drag over to the backdrop file. Release my mouse, and the Monster drops down onto my backdrop PSD file. And then let's position him so that his hands are just above the movie title. We can close the 09 working file. Go ahead and save it. And now we'll just be working on the poster itself. So we're going to rename this since it's no longer just backdrop. We'll go ahead and name it Movie Poster. I'm going to make sure you're still working with the PSD file. And again, save it wherever you like to save your working files. And say okay if you get that little dialog box. We've used Edit, Undo in order to back out of the last change that we've applied. We can also choose Edit, Redo to reapply a change we just undid. And choosing either command repeatedly steps you forward or back through multiple edits. You can choose Edit, Toggle Last State, which is not when it's grayed out right now because I haven't done anything lately. And that undoes and redoes only the most recent change. And a more visual way to step backwards and forwards, and the one that I usually use, is to use the History panel. You can either click up here, or if this isn't showing, you can go up to Window and click on the History, the title History, to see it. And the History panel is going to show you a list of your changes. If you want to go backwards, and this doesn't show us very many changes because we've just started this file, but you would just select it, the state that you want to return to, and continue working on from that point. Now the History panel continues to record your steps as long as you have Photoshop open. If you close your Photoshop file and reopen it, your History panel will begin again with the steps you make on the new file. We're going to add a tombstone now to this poster, and we're going to experiment with filters and effects to see what works, and then we'll use that History panel to reverse course if necessary. So I already do have the T1 PSD file open, so I'll click over to that tab, and this is a tombstone. It's plain, and we want to add some color and some texture. In the Tools panel, we want to return to our default color, so we'll just click the little tiny black and white icons, and that will return our foreground color to black. We're going to add a little texture, a little atmosphere to the tombstone just by adding a cloud filter. So I'll go up to my filter, render, and I'll just go to clouds. Actually, I want to go to difference clouds. And that's pretty good. We're going to leave the top of the tombstone in good focus, but we're going to blur the rest by using an iris blur. So we'll go up to filter, and we want to go to the blur gallery, and we want to choose iris blur. And in the image window, just drag this up, the ellipse up, so that the top of the tombstone stays in focus and the rest is not, and then just say OK. Then we'll use some adjustment layers to darken the image and change its color a little bit. Up here in our adjustment panel, we can choose the brightness and contrast. We'll bump this up, the brightness, to about 70. And we'll click the channel mixer icon, which is the one that looks like 3 overlapping circles. In the properties panel, we'll choose green as our output channel. And then we'll change the green value to 37. And the blue value to 108. That gives us sort of a green color like what we have on the monster skin. You can use this channel mixer adjustment to make creative color adjustments to an image. And it's also a nice alternative to the black and white adjustment for converting color images to black and white and for tinting effects. And you can also use it for some advanced color correction techniques. Still working in the adjustments panel, we'll go ahead and click the exposure icon. And then we're going to brighten up some of the lighter areas of the image by moving the slider over to 0.90, the exposure, sorry. Now, the tombstone looks a lot different than it did when we started. Let me close this panel. But it doesn't quite match the tombstones that are already in the poster. So we're going to go ahead and use that history panel to revisit the steps that we've taken. You can go up to Window and choose History Panel, or you can click on the small icon here, and you can see that Photoshop has recorded all of the steps that we just did. Now let's click on the Blur Gallery in the History state, and now everything else below is dimmed, and the image has changed to what it was when we first applied the Blur Gallery. So the color's gone and the brightness and contrast settings. But at this point, we do have the clouds filter, we do have the iris blur, but everything else has been removed. And then if you look over here in the layers panel, you'll see that there are no adjustment layers listed. Now you can, if you click Modify Channel Mixer in the History panel, you can see the states that are restored along with the color and the brightness and contrast. And there are a couple of adjustment layers in the Layers panel. However, the ones below, the ones I just selected, remain dimmed, and we are not showing the adjustment layers that are down below. Now we're just going to go to almost the very beginning and apply some different effects. And with this, we've gone back to difference clouds. Everything else is dimmed. So I'll go up to filter, and now I'm going to add some noise. This will give it a greenier look. So we can move this to the side. I just want a small amount. So I'm going to set it to 3%. And again, it might just be easier to type that in. Now I want to make sure that Gaussian is selected, and I want to select monochromatic and then say OK. Now I've lost those previous filters that I applied. So when we added noise, it replaced everything below the last state of this file that I had selected. Now we'll apply another filter. We'll go ahead and go to filter, render. We'll do some lighting effects. And when our properties panel pops up, we want to choose flashlight. Oops. Down here. I don't have flashlight. Interesting. To make it as close as I can, I'll choose point light 1. So if you don't have flashlight, go ahead and choose, oh, I'm sorry. You know what, it's up here. The spotlight, flashlight. Let's do point light. Oh, there we go. I don't know why it wasn't showing. I'll choose flashlight. And then in the properties panel, I want to choose sort of a light blue color. And then click OK. In this image window, you can drag the light source to about the upper third. So it's right about in here. Center it over the word rest in peace. And then in the properties panel, let's bump up the ambiance to all the way to 46. And then click OK. And now the tombstone's ready to join the others in the movie poster. We'll save this file. And again, like before, you can either tile open your tabs. We can go up to Window, Arrange, Tile All vertically, and you can see everything that's open. And with the Move tool, I'll drag the tombstone over to the movie poster, which is right here. And then I get a little color management warning, but I'm just going to click and say OK. Now I'm going to click on this tab. I can close my Now I have my movie poster and I want to drag the tombstone to the bottom left corner with the top third of it showing. So just drag it down here. Oops. In front of the, there we go. And we'll save our file. Now, the last thing we're going to do is upscale a low resolution image. And so we've worked with different resolution images, and sometimes you want low resolution images for like web pages and social media. But if you ever have to enlarge them, they may not contain enough information for good printing. To scale an image up in size, Photoshop needs to resample it. It needs to create new pixels where there were none and approximate their values. The Preserve Details algorithm in Photoshop gives the best results when you upscale low resolution images. We're going to use a low resolution image that was posted on a social media site, and we'll resize it so that we can use it for our printed movie poster. That file is the Faces JPEG, and we're going to zoom in to 300%, and you can see that it's a low resolution file, and it's kind of pixelated. It's kind of fuzzy. So up at the top, we want to go to Image, and we're going to go to Image Size. And we want to make sure that Resample is selected. And then we're going to change this to a percentage. So instead of pixels, we'll switch our values to percent, and we want to increase it to 400%. And you'll see that width and height are locked right now by default, so the images will resize proportionally. But if you ever needed to resize them separately, you could just click that link and it would unlock the values and unlink them. We'll go ahead and say, whoops, let's go ahead and see the glasses here and the glasses here. And then in the resample menu right here, we're going to choose bicubic smoother enlargement. And you can see that it looks a little less rough than it did before. And this resample menu includes options that control how to adjust the image for either enlargement or reduction. Automatic is the default, and it picks a method that's based on whether you're enlarging or reducing. But you might find that another option looks better depending on the image. So with this resample menu still selected, let's try Preserve Details enlargement. And we can see that that gives us a much sharper enlargement than the bicubic smoother, but it's also emphasized the existing noise. So in order to counteract that, let's make sure we're setting our reduced noise to about 50%, and that should smooth it out a little bit. Now click and hold in the preview image so that you can see the original, and you can compare it to the settings that you've chosen. And whether you upscale or downscale, you want to choose the resample method that produces the best balance between preserving details and smoothing the pixel jaggediness. And then you can use the reduced noise to remove any noise that remains after that. And then when you're happy with that, go ahead and click OK. And we'll go ahead and put this on screen again. And now we're going to paste the image into a feathered selection on the poster. So we'll select all, and we'll go to Edit, Copy, and then select the Movie Poster tab to bring it to the front, and select the elliptical marquee tool, which is hidden underneath the rectangular marquee tool. Up here in the option bar, we want to add a feather, and that softens the edge of our pasted image. We'll draw an oval in the upper right of the poster above the monster's head, and it should overlap the window and the fire escape. Let's see. Okay, so up in here. Looks like it's about like that. Make sure layer 1 is selected, and then we'll go up to Edit, and we'll go down to our Paste, and we're going to Paste Special, Paste Into that selection. And just click OK if you see that color profile mismatch. And then go ahead and select your Move tool and kind of move that image inside the feathered area. Kind of center it. You can, here we go. And then in our layers panel, let's choose luminosity, which is way at the bottom, and reduce our opacity to about 50%. Okay, and now we have added another, oops, we don't need to save this, image to our movie poster. It is complete, and so is this recording. Thanks for being with me. I'll talk to you later.